need us to get back to the roots and the crux of who we are. Either we believe God is out there, He did these things, or He didn't. And if He didn't, if He's not big enough to have created the world the way He said He is, then do I really need Him in my life? That's my question. If He can't do the big things, though He can do the small things, then I really don't need Him because I can work on the small things. So this is a bigger philosophical question than just wrestling with creation versus evolution. Now today I'm going to throw a whole bunch of stuff at you, piece after piece after piece. Next week, another whole bunch of stuff at you, piece after piece after piece. And it really has nothing to do with religion, but it does prove that what they're saying is not true. And at that point, all it does is bring us back to God. If this didn't really happen, then maybe God really did do what He said He did. So I need you to get that kind of mindset. So we're back in science mode. It looks like I didn't run you off, because most of you came back again for another week of it. And we're going to be here for a while, so you need to hang on tight. So get a hold of that pew or the chair in front of you and get ready, because we have a long way to go in a short time. But what's the interesting thing about this? The first few days here, the first few times we get together, I'm just trying to prove to you a young earth concept. Is the concept of days even possible? If I get it less than billions of years, then I've already proven that evolution is not possible. What's amazing is if we can prove that God made the world like He said He did, then evolution totally falls apart. Because they literally need billions of years of mutations to bring us about. And if I can prove that the earth is much less than billions of years old, evolution isn't even a problem. Well, we'll start that in a couple of weeks. We'll start dealing with the fallacies of evolution. So our overall passage here is in the book of Colossians. Colossians 1:16. I want you to say this with me, because here's the most important words you need to remember all day today. Say it with me. For everything was created by Him, in heaven and on earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through Him and for Him. We need to remember that we are not our own. God has made us as a beautiful creation to work by Him. And that's a beautiful thing when you get your aspect of what your life's really about. It all begins to make sense. Because it's not about me and the fights that I go through each day. It's about giving back to the one who created me. And to celebrate Him for all of His power and His ability. Again, I watch a lot of things on Discovery Channel and History Channel. And for the most part, as long as you stay away from religious things on the Discovery Channel and the History Channel, you're all right. It's pretty good science. It's gee whiz. They talk about the Big Bang, but you expect that. They'll go through their science. But one interesting thing I watched a while back, a couple of years ago, was called The Lost Squadron. Anybody remember The Lost Squadron? Guys, if your hands are going to be you. Maybe Johnny saw it. You saw that one. But what was interesting about this is July 15th of 1942, 6 brand new P-38 Lightnings and 2 P-17s took off for a bombing mission in Germany. Again, we're right in the beginning of the war. They're going to start out some serious work, but they got lost in a blizzard. They ran out of fuel, unfortunately, they had a glacier. One of them crash landed, but all the rest of the planes landed beautifully and perfectly on the ice. Brand new, right out of the plant planes. 1942. The pilots were all rescued. Everybody made it out. It's a good story. But what's neat is what happened later. In 1980, again, people understand that P-38s are very, very rare. You don't find them. Again, I'm a flight instructor and a pilot. I would love to have flown a P-38. What a beautiful plane. You see a picture of it. Just a beautiful design. But very few of them made. And so what happened is some guy in the 1980s says, if we can find those things, it's ought to be easy to scoop those up and make some money. They're going to be worth millions. Now again, this whole story was written about in Life magazine in 92. But what God Creation is interested in, and that's why this great story on Discovery Channel is bringing us back to where we are today, is what God Creation is interested in is that the planes were under 250 feet of ice. 250 feet of ice. Again, 250 feet in 50 years. We knew exactly when they landed, exactly to the day that they landed. And they knew when they found them. They simply measured down, and this is interesting information. They calculated it. This is not having to extrapolate at all. I get the tape measure, I measure down 250 feet down, yes. Simple enough. But what's interesting is it shows that hundreds of thousands of years are required to build a polar ice cap. Again, we hear this all the time from evolutionists. Hundreds of thousands of years it took to build the ice cap. In 500 years, we would have had 2,500 feet of ice. 5,000 years, 25,000 feet of ice. There is not that much ice on the earth. The earth is not touching the moon. We cannot walk to the moon on our ice caps. We can't. Again, most evolutionists, they believe in multiple ice ages. Every 2,000 years we go through an ice age, and it slowly builds up, and things like that. We don't believe millennia. What they look at through, though, is not like the data we got here. The planes landed, we know when we found them, the time, and the distance. It's all chronicled. We know exactly when it is. They say that this happens. We look at ice concentrations, we look at oxygen concentrations in the ice. Creationists believe in one ice event, and that was around Noah's flood. Now, let me tell you how that would have looked. Land movements, because all the water on the earth would have caused the land to kind of move, it would have fractured in different places. All kind of volcanism would have occurred, the volcanoes and the fissures in the ocean. At this point, because of all the things that the volcanoes are sending up, the area above the earth would have been filtered a little bit. The sun would have been able to get down as well. So there would have been a lot less solar radiation. The atmosphere would start to cool. But water tends to hold its temperature. It does. And so because of this, over the years here, we've got a whole bunch of water kind of being evaporated out of the ocean because it's so warm, going into a cool atmosphere, therefore it's causing a lot of snow. And therefore, that's why easily we can see that all it takes is really one good event like Noah's flood to have caused all of the ice that we have. We don't have enough ice. Over 1 billion years, we would have ice going from here to Mars. We'd be able to walk to Mars on the ice that the Earth has. And they know this just can't be true. So once again, what's interesting about this, in a simple Discovery Channel show, creationists were quickly able to think, we know exactly how much ice is occurring at a specific rate. And therefore, we can prove that, once again, we don't need all these ice events to give us the age of the Earth. It can be much younger and still prove that God is there. So again, an interesting little facet. If we look up that Discovery Channel, there are plenty of creationist writings on the ice event that they recovered when they got those planes. We're in the book of Genesis, so we're going to start there this morning. Written by Moses. Open up to the first page or so. The book of Genesis ends 300 years before Moses was written. And we know that the book of Genesis covers more time than the rest of the Bible all added together. It's a fascinating book. It talks about the beginnings, what God did, and His choice of a nation through whom all nations would be blessed. This is the God we serve from the beginning. He's working His plan. We'll see that this morning. So we're in Genesis 1, verses 6 through 13. So please stand with me as we learn God's Word. Then God said, let there be an expanse between the waters, separating water from water. So God made the expanse and separated water under the expanse from the water above the expanse. And it was so. God called the expanse sky. Evening came in the morning, the second day. And God said, let the water in the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and He called the gathering of the water seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and fruit trees on earth, bearing fruit, the seed in it according to their kinds. And it was so. The earth produced vegetation, seed-bearing plants, according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Evening came, and then morning, the third day. Let's pray. Dear Lord, You're mighty, and I thank You for this time, Lord. I thank You that You are big. I thank You that You are good, and that You want to show Yourself, even on our rudimentary size and our Lord. You're mighty. Let us see You every day. Just high and lifted up. We say this in Your name. Amen. Please see You. A little bit of backstory here. Last week we spoke on the first day of creation. We're going to wrestle with this. I know if you're not a scientist, you're going to do what I can to make it halfway entertaining where you'll want to listen to it. But we're dealing with the concept of creation. And again, I have a little bit of a science background. I kind of understand this. But I believe that God made the world in 6 days. I believe He did what He said He did. I understand that it doesn't seem like I'm simplistic in thinking that way. My God is big. And yours may be small. But my God is big. And He can do anything He chooses to do if He wants to do it. That's who He is. And it's my goal to help you understand this. This is where we're going. Evolutionists believe, and probably sadly enough, most of the people who even listen to education today We believe that the Earth is very old, 13.7 billion years. Most of them would say that. There's it's almost common fact. We just prove it. Yes, this is science, and if you want to believe the Earth is 13.7 billion years old. They say that as if it's a matter of fact. There's non-negotiable, no discussion with it. So as we teach the days of creation, I'm trying to prove to you that the Earth is young. In this, and again, if you were here last week, you were able to hear about Einstein's general theory of relativity, and you saw that E equals mc squared, which has a lot more variables behind it. But the variables are very small, so they can pull them out because we don't need them for general calculation. But we found out that in that equation there is a time factor. And one of the interesting things we were able to look at that is this, as if God started everything from one small spot and blew it out. Let's say He did that. Let's give Him the Big Bang. Everything else past that we'll wrestle with later. Well, let's give Him the Big Bang for just a minute. We found out that that equation proves that where there's a lot of mass, all the mass is coming out and it's barely made itself out in very, very little time. And on the outer edge, where there's little mass, everything's still toward the center working its way out. There's a lot of time. So we were able to look at that last week. You can look at that, sir, and kind of wrestle with that. Well, we proved, actually, through Einstein's equation, that it could have been simple days revolving in the center where we are, and billions of years ahead on the outside edge because of the mass differential and the equation and the mathematics involved. So except for something like that, I'm going to have trouble to be proving 6 days. Can't do it. But if I can get you anywhere under billions of years, evolution is possible. Okay? So understand the science that I'm going to bring up to you does not prove 6 days. I can't do that. Einstein helps us there. But I can say that billions of years is ridiculous. And we're going to go through 3 or 4 things this morning that will very quickly show that. So understand that's my weakness, and that's where I have to break down. I have to be honest with you. I can't show 6 days. But I can show you 10,000 years. I can show you the Earth's only 10,000 years old, maybe 20. Stretching with some of these different things we're going to look at. So the first thing I want you to know this morning is that God offers beauty. God offers beauty. Verses 6 through 8. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters, separating water from water." So God made the expanse, separated the water into the expanse from the water above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse sky. Evening came, and then morning the second day. God is at work again. He's not stopped. He wasn't finished yesterday. Last week when we started day 1. He's got another day's worth of work to do. And it said, then God said, God made this happen, and it didn't happen on its own. That's the one thing we must remember. This didn't just happen because the singularity couldn't hold itself together anymore. God chose to create the world. And God chose to create it for His beautiful, perfect creation, which is you. No matter how flawed you may think you were made perfect in His image. You just need to get yourself back on track and look for Him rather than your own desires. And maybe you can understand where you need to be. But God made this happen. Psalm 104:5. He established the earth on its foundations and will never be shaken. The psalmist here, the writer of that psalm, is very matter of fact. This is the God I serve. This is what He did. And I believe it. And I need you to understand that and have that simplistic view. Because that's true faith. When we look at these evolutionists, when we look at these cosmologists, they're simply having, actually, when you look at it, they've got more faith than we do. Because their science stops here and here's where they want to go. It's a huge leap to go from point A to point B. Everything of ours makes total sense. There's a God out there who created us and made us the way He chose to make us. And that's what there's freedom. Again, let there be an expanse between the waters. The earth and the sky were covered in water at this point. Again, essentially it's just a ball of water with a whole bunch of stuff in the water, what you see in the ocean or something like that. This is kind of the best way we can see it. And even this helps us to prove. Now listen to this. The magazine Nature in September, just a few months ago, this is something Randy got me on to, Randy all sorts of good stuff at me, had an article that said, essentially, that the earth has water older than the sun. The magazine, this science magazine, had a full article spread. You can look it up. Nature is one of the few magazines that is peer-reviewed, meaning other scientists have to look at it to say, yes, we agree with this, and we will send this out. It's not just anybody can write it in the magazine Nature. Other scientists have to approve it. And they agreed with this, saying, yes, much of the water is older than the sun. We can look at this. Again, this is all theoretical, yet we see in Genesis 1:6 that before land there was water. Again, they're proving God's word every time they turn around. That magazine, whether it knows it or not, is proving God made the waters the way He did on day 2. This is what it's proving. Before the sun, there was water. The sun was actually made on day 4. We'll get to it next week. But you see these kind of things. They don't want to admit it, but they're proving God every chance they get. Again, I don't want to get into that argument. You can read it, it's deep and thick. You can look at it. But all they've done is prove day 2 of creation. God is good, and God did what He said He's going to do. God separated the atmosphere from the sky. He's essentially making an atmosphere for His people. Again, everything is in right, beautiful progression. He's preparing for us to be. And He knows that we've got to have a place to breathe. Again, He needs to give man an area in which to live. We couldn't be rolling through eternal fog. I'm sure London is beautiful, but the fog cleared yet. I love the clear skies here. Seattle, all the rain, and I'm sure I've been up there, it's beautiful. But I want to go at a time when it's kind of got some sun out. Okay? This is the kind of thing we can't roll around in this. We wouldn't be able to see all the beauty that God gives us. This is a beautiful place out here. Almost every evening you see a beautiful sunset, which in all my life I've never been able to see the sunsets like that here. Beautiful sunsets or fluffy clouds. And you just take it for granted. You have such little water in your atmosphere that it makes everything so crystal clear. Again, you may complain about that. I love it. I lived in North Carolina for a handful of years. We would walk out, you're cut in the water with a knife trying to get through it. Please, you walk out, it's 70 degrees, and you're sweating. It's so humid out there. You see things like beautiful clear skies. And we take this for granted because you live in this beautiful country. Or things like rainbows. Or something that was seen very recently at the Red River, a rare ice halo. Put that picture up. You guys get to see that picture? You don't get to see that anywhere else. I've never seen double rainbows ever until I moved to this state. And usually, I saw 5 last week. That's a huge deal for a person who's never seen it. Yes, something like that. The way God is refracting the sun through the atmosphere. Again, He's using the beautiful laws of science to show all of His beauty. Only God can paint the skies like that. And God did this, and it was so. It was the second day. And I love it, the writer here, even God is inspiring the writer. As a matter of fact, it was so. There's no discussion, there's no question. In the writer's mind, there was no other way this could have occurred. God did it. It was the second day. Do you believe that?
Amen.
Do you have that much of a matter of fact concept? Yeah, God did this. The question comes, if we can believe this, why we have so much trouble believing that He can do other things personally within our lives? He can create the universe. He can separate water. He can invent light. And yet, He can't solve my little financial problem. He can't solve my health issue. God's not big enough to bring my family back together. Is that who we are? Do you just believe Genesis 1, or is there other issues in the Bible I need to wrestle with later? Because this is helping us in all aspects of our lives. We get root down to the sheer base of what everything is all about. That God did what He said He would do, and that He saved us, and that He can be there for us. Then we have nothing to worry. We need to be so matter of fact that, you know what, I'm having a health issue. God is big. God is strong. God can work in this financial issue. God can bring my family back because God did it. I know it's matter of fact. This is the spirit we need to have. This is much more than creation versus evolution. We're getting down to the bare bones of who we need to be. And we're getting ready to wrestle with issues of science. But this is about who we need to understand what that God is. God can do anything He chooses to do. Luke 18:27, this is a great one. What is impossible with men is possible with God. Amen to anyone.
Amen.
You believe that. Then the next time you have an issue, this time you're moving when you want it, whatever problem it is, won't you turn it over to Him? It's not possible with Him. I can't make the universe. I can't make anything at all. I don't know anything, really. I'm not good at anything like that. But God can do it. Because he's big, and he's strong, and he wants to show himself. That's why he uses some science around us. Nature, that magazine was proving God. They didn't even know it. We're about to see something in a minute that's going to, once again, they have no idea they're proving God. Here we go. Then we see God gave names to his creation. He said, this is going to be the land, this is going to be the water, I'm going to separate these things. And it's the second day. Again, as we discuss creation, I want to help you understand that the concept of days is possibly so ingrained in us to believe this 13.7 billion years that we just totally forget about Genesis 1. They say it as a matter of fact, and it just becomes part of our vernacular. It's how we start thinking. But something like soft tissue and fossils can help to prove that God is here, and that God has made this world much less than things. Most scientists, evolutionists, will believe that dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. Yet a discovery by a Dr. Schweitzer may change that. Show this video.
Happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast, and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was, and it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the key.
No. She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened? Yes, that's the dinosaur bone without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible. This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this, and you think, what? You didn't want to tell everybody. But you'd be ridiculed, right? And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
Since you dissolved the bone away, there were blood vessels, and I was like shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
how could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science. That organic material can't possibly survive even 1 million years, let alone 68 million. Mary, Jack, and their team published their UX findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked. Critics said their samples might have been contaminated, or that the supposed blood vessels were actually something called biofilm, a type of slime. But as Mary showed us, she's been able to replicate her findings. These are pieces of an even older dinosaur, a well-preserved.
What we see here is the bones show what appear to be blood vessels. The type seen in bone marrow today. Anybody under a microscope would see this same thing. Is that possible after 68 million years? Is it? The problem is that no human, here's the issue, no human actually had a calendar out at the time when that dinosaur died to say it was 68 million years. Okay, passed over. It is 68 million BC, May 4th. Put this on here, the dinosaur would find this thing. They've got a little bit of chronology to know that that's when it died. This is very different than the planes. The planes we knew went down in 1942, July 15th. Here, they are supposing, this is their supposition, that it died 68 million years ago. And what you'll go on to say is that she was amazed that a dinosaur 68 million years could show blood vessels. What is amazing to me is they didn't understand that maybe it's only a 5,000-year-old dinosaur. Maybe it didn't die that long ago. When you look at Egyptian mummies, which we do know when they died, because Egypt is very well written. I mean, everything is on the walls and in the caves, and when they have these, they were buried, they have writings and the dates on them. We know exactly, almost to the month, when most of these people died. We see these kind of things. We see the exact same things that they found in that dinosaur that they believe to be 68 million years old. In Egyptian mummies, the Tyrolean ice bear found in the Alps in 91. All this DNA, we can find these things today because it's not that old. Now they're going to take it, oh my goodness, we found a huge discovery, an old dinosaur, 68 million, and we're starting to find DNA. Why can't they understand that maybe the dinosaur's not that old? Maybe they understand that we can find Egyptian mummies with the same thing, and it's not that old. All of this is consistent with a younger perspective, but is implausible with the evolutionist perspective about dinosaurs that died off millions of years ago. Once again, a scientist somewhere in the world finding another proof that what they're saying about 68 million years maybe is not true. Again, they're just bad and they have no idea how this could happen. Well, maybe they need to turn it up, their suppositions upside down and say, you know, what if this world is younger than it looks like it is? Maybe what we've been saying all along for the last 50 years is wrong. So we see that God offers beauty. God is well planned, verses 9 and 10. Then God said, let the water of the sky be gathered in one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so, and God called the dry land earth, and he called the gathering of the water seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, once again, God is being very clear. The writer is being very clear. God created all of these things. If you don't believe this, what else in the Bible don't you believe? Simple enough. I'm challenging you personally today on this question. If you cannot believe Genesis 1, what else don't you believe? Get it out so at least start wrestling with it. That'll be our next series after that. Here's the issue I got to wrestle with next. I want you to be strong because the world needs you to be strong. It's time for us to stand up. We cannot allow them to push us any farther back. God is big and He needs an army ready to fight for Him. Amen. Again, if I can't believe Genesis 1, will it is God? Did He really send His Son Jesus? Did Christ die for us? Was He resurrected? Can He really forgive our sins? I don't believe Genesis 1. I don't believe Jonah. I don't believe Noah. The world wasn't destroyed. Just a small area from the Baltic Sea, where the Baltic Sea broke off into land for about 50 miles. Again, you've heard those foolish statements. Either God did it or He didn't. And if He did, I don't need it. You can't be serious. Either God did this, or He didn't. If He did, He's not big enough to solve my problems. You need to get everything turned back and put in place. He did what He said at this point. At this point, you see here, the earth is covered in water. And God knows this isn't going to work. This isn't like Water World with Kevin Costner, where we got a whole things here. It's not. We kind of have to have some dry land around us. We got to be on that. God is preparing. He said, let there be land and seas. God's continuing in His plan to prepare a place for us. We can't see we're designed for land. We're designed for the beautiful sun that's going to bathe us. If we stay in the water too long, we know that we get lung issues, we get skin issues. Therefore, God's got to prepare it. Okay? This is who I want people to be. I'm going to make a perfect place for them. Hebrews 1:10, in the beginning, Lord, to establish the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. God saw it was good. Again, when God said it's good, it is not just that's good. That's all right. It's perfect. He is pleased with it. It's exactly the way He chose it to be. That's what good means in the Hebrew. It's not just good. How you doing? I'm good. It's perfect. I destined it to be that way, and I am pleased because it came out exactly as I had planned. Where else has God been content like this in the Bible? Colossians 1:18. He is also the head of the body. We're talking about Jesus here, the church. He's the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that He might come to have first place in everything. For God was pleased to have all this fullness dwell in Him. God was pleased that Jesus God was able to go inside Jesus and be full and complete in Him. Where else do we see that He was pleased? God was pleased. What happened when Jesus got baptized? My beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. There are very few times God's pleased, and this is one. All the rest of the time, most likely come with reference to His Son. So understand that and live like that. God was pleased that Christ took on His attributes. When God moves, He's pleased because His works are righteous and holy. They will bless Himself and they will bless others. When God does something mighty, you guarantee your life will be changed for the better. Whether at this point you understand it or not, I've had plenty of times that God's moved in my life and I said, this doesn't look better. This is not the better I was hoping for. But get a little bit of time into it. And I look back and see, my goodness, you're so much better than I ever could imagine. You blessed me, you blessed yourself, and now I get it. We're still on the second thing. Now I want to continue to prove that this is a possibility of the 6 days being possible, anything less than billions of years, 10,000 years. Another interesting thing we learned about is called the recession of the moon. Again, you can write these down. They're going to be on the website. You can pull all these proofs off of there and use them in conversation. But all I need to do is throw a wrench in their work and to slow their clock wheels down just a bit where they have to backtrack when you talk to you. I want you to be able to get them off kilter. That's what you need to do when you talk to them, because they come off so strong and so pompous as if it's fact. But when you talk about the recession of the moon, the gravitational pull of the moon creates what they call a tidal bulge on Earth. This essentially does is causes the moon to spiral outward over time. Okay? And they've actually been able to prove this is moving a quarter of an inch a year. Okay? Something like that. It's not very, very much. But they can see that the Earth in the last 40 years is a little farther out than it was today. They can see that. Because of this effect, the moon would have been much closer to the Earth in the past. There are some things that when we suppose, we just have to put it out for 68 million years, is one method of proving. We'll talk about radiocarbon dating and things like that in the future. But they say, okay, this helps us here, that's what it is. This is an easy one to suppose. And we have no proof that the Earth ever was closer. But we know it's moving out. That if you reverse time, it would probably move its way back in. Does anybody else have any trouble with that? That seems like a normal thing to think. If now it's working its way out, you run it backwards, it's going to work its way in. Now, based on gravitational forces, at the current rate of recession, we can calculate how much the moon's moved away. Now, if the Earth is only 6,000 years old, which is what the Bible tends to give us as a general time frame of man on Earth, around 6,000 years, then the Earth would have moved out only 800 feet, which is not going to affect us too much. The gravitational changes won't affect us. Here's the problem. Most astronomy books teach that the moon is over 4 billion years old, which poses a major problem. Less than 1 billion years ago, the moon would have literally been touching the Earth. They would have had so much mass, their mass would have attracted each other, and the rotation is not such that it would have ever left the Earth's rotation. They would have been touched together forever. So 6,000 years, none of this is a problem. They don't like to think about this because a billion years ago, if the Earth is 13.7 billion years old, let's just say a billion years ago, the Earth and the moon would have been touching. And there would have been no possibility for any part of evolution to ever occur because of the gravitational forces and the destructive forces of two large planets touching. Once again, there's something that falls apart. Think about these things. You say, no, I can't wrestle with radiocarbon dating, but throw this thing out. And throw this thing in, and we can deal with carbon dating. We'll talk about that in the future. So when you think about that recession of the moon, once again proves there's no possibility that this world is that old. Not unless everything changed. At one point, the moon says, okay, I'm happy where I am, but okay, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm sick of looking at the Earth. Let's go start working our way out. Maybe I can go see other things. That even is a difficult problem. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. We can see what's happening today. We work it back with science. So we see the God of beauty. God is well planned. Finally, God is meticulous. 11 and 13. Then God said, let the earth produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants. And it was so. The earth did these things. And God saw that it was good. Evening came and then morning the third day. When you see repetition in the Hebrew, in the Old Testament, now the New Testament has, in the Greek, has forms of imperative. So they can very clearly put an exclamation point on something that makes sense. The Hebrew tenses don't have anything like that. So when they repeat themselves, this plant did this and it put seed, and then God did it, but then the plant did this and did seed. Finish the first two verses. They're repeating themselves essentially. What you're seeing is emphasis. The writer is trying to say, let me tell you, once again, this did happen this way. God was very clear. Then God said, the writer is clear again that God did these things. This is most likely written by Moses, and it should be obvious that God did this to him. Why would he need to say that God did this? Would you ever ask those questions when you read God's Word? He's going to assume that God did this. There's no one else for Moses except God. So why would he say that? Well, we know that at this time, Egypt had what they call the cosmogony of the homophilous. They had lots of gods. Agdo, Atu, Ta, Amun. The Babylonians had the Enuma Elish, Marduk. And Marduk made man to serve himself. And so we see these are the gods that are surrounding the Israelites at this time. And what Moses is saying is none of those gods that did this thing. No matter what you and your nation think, it's the God of the universe, Yahweh God, that created the world and no one else. He's being as clear as he can. He's saying, once again, these stories are just stories that have nothing to prove. My God did this thing. Over and over again. When he repeats this, and it was so, he's being emphatic. They don't have a tendency of yelling. They really don't do that in writings. They repeat themselves. And by repetition, there is no other way except this one way. Believe it or walk away, but you're not going to change my mind. That's what this person is saying. We see it produce vegetation. This has to be next because man has to eat. We're a couple days down the line. We're coming along. God's got to prepare the world for us. Again, we need these things. We need things like things to eat. We need shades. We need to use lumber. We need to build our homes. It has to be ready. God is meticulous and well planned, well organized. How many of us have gotten into probably guys, probably ladies, but gotten into a bathroom project? I've done a lot of bathrooms, replaced them, poured everything out, start over, and you find out you got the order wrong. You get into it, somehow you're an order off. Then you have to rip it out because this thing has to go in first. We've all done that because we're human and we make those mistakes. God doesn't. He's working his plan piece by piece to the end. It took me about 4 bathrooms to figure out how everything goes in. I really got that bathroom right. Let me tell you, it was beautiful before God moved us once again. So the next person enjoyed that bathroom. But the vegetation also has to be able to reproduce itself. When we cut that tree down, we've got to have another one come back up. If we need to build a home or we need to eat off this apple tree, after 13.7 million years, I guarantee there are going to be no more apples left if God didn't make them reproduce. So it has to be well planned and meticulous. Again, all that man uses must reproduce itself. God's ensuring that man is taken care of perpetually. So He made this big, beautiful place for us to be able to have a beautiful life and worship Him. Again, is your life beautiful? Are you going to be able to celebrate in your life? I hope you are. It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. There are difficult times. But your life should be beautiful. And a thing that people can look at, understand that people are watching you every day. They are. They may not be consciously thinking about it, but they're seeing something different about you than they're seeing about this other person. And they're going to want, eventually, when they get into enough trouble, they're going to want to look at you and say, please help me. What is it you have that I don't have? And the only thing that separates us is Christ. He's the only one who gives us the joy and the hope. God has produced everything that we need to enjoy every minute of our lives. And if we just simply rely on Him to take care of what we can be like children and just bumble through life. With the simplicity that they have. They don't worry about things. Again, I look at Jessie, this little girl. You know, big old tall Jessie walking. You think that little girl's got anything to worry about? No. Dad will take care of her. This is the kind of thing we need to do with reference to our God. We need to worship Him and trust Him. Again, it's my task. This is the 3rd day at this point. God's made all of these things. It's my task once again to prove the young earth. And this video is about 3 or 4 minutes long. And I need you to listen closely because the teacher is a Christian man, but he has kind of an Asian accent. So we're focusing. We're talking about the Earth's decaying magnetic field. Show this.
I'm here from AnswersAcademy.info. Now, the reason why your compass points approximately close to the north is because it aligns with the geomagnetic field of the Earth. Now, the magnetic field that surrounds the Earth has an important design feature. As most of you would know, that the universe contains radiation which is harmful to living tissue. What the Earth's magnetic field does is that it protects life by deflecting this dangerous cosmic radiation. What causes the Earth's magnetic field? Well, it is caused by electric currents within its interior. And such currents, as they encounter electrical resistance, so they naturally decay with time in terms of the magnetic field energy. So we would therefore expect that the magnetic field of the Earth to become weaker as time progresses. In fact, we have been able to measure the strength of the magnetic field for over a century. Every century, the magnetic field decays and decreases and becomes weaker by about 5%. However, if the Earth were millions and billions of years old as claimed by the evolutionists, then the geomagnetic field would have been so strong in the past that life would not have been possible. But if the Earth is only a few thousand years old, the magnetic field in the past would have been stronger and yet quite perfectly suitable for life. In fact, the total energy stored in the Earth's magnetic field is decreasing with a half-life of 1,465 years. At this rate, the field could not be more than 20,000 years old. So you see from logical observational data from the strength of the magnetic field and its rate of decay, and if we extrapolate it to the past, the Earth could not have been millions and billions of years old. It could only be in the range of thousands of years old, which fits into a biblical framework and timeline. The Word of God is true, and the heavens and the earth declare His message and His handiwork. This is it.
Again, one other thing to throw our wrench in their work. 13.7 billion years is not possible. The magnetic field we have on the Earth is surrounded, and we need that magnetic field because we wouldn't be able to make it with the radiation that's coming from the sun. We would die off. And if the magnetic field were strong enough where it is, and we backtrack 13.7 billion years, at that point that magnetic field would have been so large that it would have killed any possibility of living life on the Earth. So how do they wrestle with that? How do they deal with that? Again, no life could have survived if they believed that 13.7 billion years to be true. Did God create the world in 6 days, or was it 5,000.5 billion days? Which one was it? Either He did or He didn't. You need to start picking your side. And I need you to stay strong. God needs His people strong. Find a side to live on. Revelation 3:16, this is a big one. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot or cold, I have vomit you out of my mouth. God doesn't need us if we're weak. God doesn't need us if we can't find and truly trust that what He said He did, He did. He wants those who are willing to say, yes, God, whatever you say, I will do it. No, I don't like that. Okay, what else you got? No, I'm not happy with that. God, what else? Okay, I think you're God, but I don't trust you at all. Because I can't trust your word. If you reject the Bible, at least I know where you stand. There's nothing harder than wrestling with a guy who thinks he chooses. You gotta know where to go. I usually walk away. I got better things to do than wrestling with your concept of truth. Either you believe it or you don't. And if you do, you're ready. You're ready to go. But again, as I told you from the beginning, this is much deeper than creation versus evolution. This comes down to the crux of what you believe. Is the world going to manipulate you, or are you going to understand truly what God has done? And if you are, then I need you to stand strong. Because it's coming. This church needs to be ready. I want an army that when God says move, whatever He says for us, we are ready to tackle it, and we have no doubt that He will be great and honored and mighty and lifted up. I don't need a bunch of people saying, I think He might do this. I think He might have told us to do this. I kind of believe what He said. I'm not sure about all of it, but I'm working on it. We talked about planes today. Planes under ice. We talked about old water. Soft tissues and cells. I talked about a move that moves. And your compass not working out well all the time. We talked about these things. Is this not enough information to cause you to doubt some of what the evolution is saying? And if it's not, maybe another week or two, I'll throw more at you. Eventually you're going to say, I can't wrestle with all of this. I just can't. There's got to be more to this God thing than I've ever thought before. God is true. God said He did, and He did it, and I believe that. I'm going to offer you more information. God's not in a rush. God will do great things through you, and He'll change the way you choose.